All right, guys, you can begin.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Tonight, me and my teammate would be presenting on the chapter Being in Communities. So, a short overview of the chapter. This chapter discusses the nature of communities, principles of community development, and your role as an active member of your communities. Envisioning each group or organization you are in as a community provides a mental model that will respond to the relational needs of these rapidly changing times. Individuals function concurrently in many different kinds of community. Thinking of each of your formal and informal groups as a community provides a frame for the interdependence of relational leadership. The importance of community. Knowing about community, philosophically believing in the width of community, and being skilled at developing and sustaining community are essential aspects of relational leadership. Realistically, we all live, work, and learn in imperfect communities, as ideal communities do not exist in reality. If said community is thriving to be better, it ends up becoming a supportive environment for individual and group growth. The continuous discussion of the questions, who are we and what matters, is carried on when any group of people come together for a purpose. These two questions are essential in understanding yourself and others, which in turn becomes essential for the creation and nurturing of the context in which the group functions. Gardner, 1990, from the textbook, asserts that skill in the building and rebuilding of community is not just another of the innumerable requirements of contemporary leadership. It is one of the highest and most essential skills a leader can command. Relational leadership calls for attending to a community as a discipline. The term discipline in this case would refer to a concept to be studied, learned, and practiced, the same way you would an academic subject. It is not enough to understand self and others. Understanding is essential to creating and nurturing the context in which the group or organization functions. For example, if you were to think about a situation where you were part of a group or a committee that was effective and meaningful, you would have felt a sense of commitment and belonging. However, not all groups will feel that way. I'm sure you can think of a group that you were a part of where you were disinterested in the context and felt very little commitment to the group. Even though the goal of the group may have been accomplished, you would not have been able to say that you enjoyed the journey. Element of community. A community is most often described as a social group that not only shares an identity and structured pattern of interaction, but also a common geographical territory. Community is a place where an attitude of connection and commitment occurs that sustains relationships and purpose. Sharing that commitment is the essence of relational leadership. For example, at the beginning of the chapter, we met a scenario with a group where a member was unable to attend a meeting. So the presence of that member mattered so much to the rest of the group that they felt the need to reach out to her to make sure that she was okay, if anything was wrong, if she needed anything. So in this environment, each person feels a sense of ownership and shared leadership. Communities know they are a collection of individuals who accomplish their goals through trust and teamwork. Teamwork requires processes to make decisions, method of communication, and a commitment to some level of participation by community members. Through their work, community members develop a shared culture that is concerned about new members. Effective communities realize they are not insular, but are in a constant, dynamic interaction with their broader environment. Traditionally, communities were viewed as a homogeneous group of people who have much in common and who may even resemble each other. Those may indeed be communities, yet cultural and ethnic diversity are necessary resources for building community. A true community cannot exist without diversity. So here I have 8 elements for effective communities. They are wholeness incorporating diversity, a shared culture, Good internal communication, caring, trust, and teamwork, group maintenance and governance, participation and shared leadership tasks, development of young people or new members, and links with the new world. So, other traditional views have held that communities need face to face interaction, which is only possible through close geographic proximity. Increasingly, however, the term community also describes those with common identity and interaction, but without geographic proximity. Electronic networks have provided a creative way for communities of common interest to interact. There are those who express concern that electronic chat rooms diminish community. Indeed, it is possible to become isolated from face to face interaction when using the computer for most of your interactions. Although many remain cautious of internet relationships, studies demonstrate that offline and online relationships do not differ in depth or breadth and may even be associated with social well being. You can also find identity and feel a sense of community with others without interacting. So, for example, if you are part of a group or even a hobby, you could go online and you could search for that hobby, and immediately you would find other persons who share the same interests and who have a similar mindset. And you don't necessarily have to interact with them. You could just look at their content, look at what they are posting, and stuff like that. As human beings, we all want meaningful connections to others. Settings that are inclusive and empowering, in which there is purposeful change being accomplished through ethical and collaborative processes, are the epitome of effective community. A common center. A true community is not a collection of people who all think alike, but people with differing minds and complementary natures. Developing communities depend on relational leadership that deeply values the inclusion of all members empowered to work together toward common purposes. In these communities, openness is a central practice. True dialogue requires listening and being willing to give up the need for control, even when your ideas and thoughts are in conflict with those of another. Communities speak to us in moral voices. They lay claims on their members. Indeed, they are the most important sustaining source of moral voices other than the inner self. Communities are where we exhibit the values to which we are committed. The difference between our espoused values and actual behaviors becomes transparent in communities. Communities of practice. It is not sufficient to think of yourself as being a mere member of multiple communities. Membership may mean having only a passive connection or being a name on a roster. Being a member of a community of practice, however, implies an engagement with others who are working towards some action. The people in that community are doing something, and you are a part of that in some meaningful way. Each person belongs to many communities of practice, but with varying degrees of centrality. In some communities of practice, we are only peripherally involved. In others, we are centrally involved. The social networks that we form in these communities of practice are critical to accomplishing shared goals, as well as to our personal identification and satisfaction. A high level of people's involvement in their diverse communities characterizes the nature of American democracy. Focusing on communities of practice also raises the question: how can these communities best function to fully engage community members? The policies, behaviors, expectations, norms, and other structures may promote or may prohibit your meaningful involvement in that community. Assess the environment of any of your communities of practice to determine how their structures and processes may be blocking meaningful identity and involvement with that culture. Addressing the information can help it become a more effective environment. Being in community requires an awareness of reciprocal processes. An individual has to decide to be part of the larger community and the community has to involve and welcome individuals. Harvard sociologist Charles Wiley asserts that in any community, there are concurrent obligations of contributive justice and distributive justice. So each individual in the community must practice contributive justice. So this emphasizes that justice is achieved not when benefits are received, but rather when there is both the duty and opportunity for everyone to contribute labor and decision making. Conversely, the community must practice the distributive justice. So, this is the perceived fairness of an allocation, or more broadly, to how people judge what they receive. It is essentially the fair distribution of the burden and benefits of social cooperation among diverse persons with competing needs and claims. So, communities sometimes act to remove members who are not willing to uphold shared values. Communities thrive on serial reciprocity. Learning to feel responsible for others in our communities of practice is critical for our human connection. Arun Gandhi shares many lessons he learned as a small boy from his grandfather. And among these lessons were his grandfather's reflections on what he thought caused violence in human life. So these reflections were: wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, commerce without morality, science without humanity, worship without sacrifice, politics without principle, and rights without responsibilities. So I will now pass you on to Sparkle, who will continue the rest of the presentation.
Good night, guys. The development of community. The first stage is pseudo-community. This is the stage where everyone feels safe and fine. Everyone is getting along, relationships are courteous, but in reality, it is superficial and an undeveloped level of community. This is because everyone avoids conflict, while true community is conflict resolving. The second stage is chaos. This is where community is built. This is where everyone comes together to get their different views, seeing that everyone sees the world from a different perspective. This is where it becomes chaotic. The different views and opinions and perspectives cause individuals to retreat or shy away. This is where conflict resolution comes into play, coming to common ground. The third stage is realization. This is where feelings, assumptions, ideas, stereotypes, or motives become barriers to truly listening and understanding. Again, emptiness refers to oneself of the assumption and preconceived notion that may block one from truly listening. The fourth stage is true authenticity, community. Conflicts still arise, but they are always to be heard, and the community members usually know they cannot reach consensus or any level of agreement without this consensus or disagreement to create truly better decisions. Next slide. Oh, while building community, it's never I, it's we. This allows everyone to feel a sense of belonging while community building. Some communities never leave the pseudo community and find ways to courteously interact and get their work done. By doing this, it creates authenticity in the community, a community that engages with each other in the developmental process while will reach a stage of authentically functioning, realizing that being a community is a process and not an end state. Learning that a community will constantly change and won't remain stagnant is important to learn because everything and everyone is evolving. It is also important to learn as things evolve and change, new crises will arise, causing new conflicts. This is where community is tested, meaning it's time to rebuild the community. The only thing that constant in life is change, meaning that it will be continuous work to ensure that everyone in the community feels like they belong, because the main goal of community is to be a service to everyone. 7 community building principles. Number 1, be committed. Commitment is a prerequisite for a community to exist. Number 2, be mindful. Think about how the things you do and say may affect members of the community. Number 3, be unconditionally accepting. Accepting others as they are. Do not try to control or change them. Minimize expectations, suspicions, and mistrust. Number 4, be concerned for both yourself and others. Engage with each other. Consult each other on issues that affect them and be open to their ideas. Number 5, be understanding. Strive to understand others as completely as possible. Number 4, be ethical. Engage in behavior that is not a means to an end, but behavior that is morally right in and of itself. Number 7, be peaceful. Do not be violent, deceitful, breach values, promises, or be secretive. Seek for harmony and internal harmony with others. College communities. A college community has been described as communities of scholars or as learning communities. Yet in reality, a sense of community is not always a shared experience. In a community, hate crimes can happen on campus, incivility can be found in Senate meetings. Some organizations devalue the purpose of other organizations, and not all people know or care about each other. The Carnegie Foundation of Teaching 1990 conducted a major study of what students, faculty, and staff would like to change about their campuses. All the groups agreed that they need need a renewed sense of community, not a return to an older, homogeneous model, but a kaleidoscopic community that embraces differences and finds common purpose. The organization wants to promote a purposeful, healthy community, open, disciplined, caring, and celebrative. The college campus is a microcosm of the community. The entire college campus is a community and includes multiple communities. Keeping in mind there are different communities within the college campus, such as students, faculty, administrators, staff, and alumni. Within these groups, there are smaller communities clusters such as students, the Asian Student Association, and graduates. Each cluster have unique needs and shares community issues. There are communities by department and by the programs of functional units such as engineering, the Student Activity Office, the Intercollegiate Athletic Program, and the Women's Center. Although these are all different communities, they are all bound together by a common goal of a community of people committed to learning and advancing their education. Different organizations have different purposes and focus. Higher education communities emphasize such elements as learning, scholarships, academic freedom, and student development. A social organization might emphasize friendship, fun, and enriching experiences. A sports team stresses competence, teamwork, and responsibility. Regardless of the special mission and focus of these groups and organizations, the people in them will experience healthy communities if they intentionally practice the discipline of community. Smaller communities become factors of developing global communities. Identifying our common interests and broadening our relationship will be defining elements of the century communities. The global communities of the future will be at least a series of communities that are interdependent and diverse, embracing differences, releasing energy, and building cohesions. The broader global community will be enhanced by the help of many smaller communities that constitute the whole. Committing to promote and develop communities in the places you function on campus is a key way of building and supporting the larger campus community. Framing any group or organization as a community of people working together for a shared purpose enhances relational leadership. Thinking of that group as a community connects participants to a shared paradigm of expectations and obligations. To flourish, communities require relational leadership. Relational leadership practices value community as a context in which meaningful change can occur.
Okay, so that is the end of our presentation. Um, Thank you all for listening. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay.
All right. If there are no questions, I'll pause the recording.